God bless you guys, church. How you guys doing today? Amen. Well, for those who don't know, I am Daniel Ratz, and I am the founder of Operation Worth. As you can see here, it says, see their worth, grow in worth, walk in worth. That's exactly what we do. We help these kids and teens see, grow, and walk in what they have in the love and worth they have in Jesus Christ. Recently, for those who know me now, a little update, I am now married from last time. Yeah. Got married this last October, October 19th, to the love of my life, Abigail. And we have our three kids here. We have Juanito, which is our youngest, Meredith, which is the second youngest, and then Alexis, our oldest here. And you see in the picture over here, we also have Chava and Hector, which Lord willing, one day we'll be adopting them as well. So we'll have a big family soon, hopefully, Lord willing. So a lot of things going on in my life right now. But yeah, I just want to get an update really quick, let you guys know that I'm married and loving the married life. It's different. God's teaching me a lot of things through that. Because you always think that, before you think you're good, and then when you get married and you're with somebody all the time, then you're like, wow, I really need to work on myself. So, but uh, but going back to what Operation Worth does, like I said, what we do is we help kids and teens see, grow, and walk in the worth and the love they have in Jesus Christ. So we help them see first who God really is, the hope that they have in him. Help them see that there's more to life than what they're living, that there's a God who loves them and cares about them and really wants the best for them. And we help them get to that point to where they can understand it fully and accept him for themselves. But not only that, we help them see that, we help them grow in that. So not only after we help them get to that point to accept Jesus, our Lord and Savior, we help them continue to grow in that way through different programs during the week, through the year that we have. But we help them grow to become true followers of Christ. Not just I heard the word one time and I go on my life and now what? But we help them grow in that so they become true followers and disciples of Christ. And also we help them walk out the callings, the desires that God has placed on their heart for them to walk through and complete that calling that God has given them. I know for me, for example, when I turned 18 and I learned that God wanted me to be a missionary with my life, it was difficult at first trying to do everything myself. And I was trying to figure everything out, and I couldn't figure it out. But I had some people that came along in my life a few months later that helped me walk that out. And a lot of these kids here in Mexico, too, where we're living and doing stuff there in Tijuana, Mexico, there is no help. There's no anybody that can help them. Very, very few ministries that from the States or from Canada or from wherever, because we actually have people from Canada down there too. But people that just don't reach to the kids, but they reach in other ways, like with homes or with other things like that. They build homes or they fund this project or fund this thing. But to reach the kids, there's not many people who do that. And we want to help them get to that because many kids, even, living there in Tijuana where I live, a lot of the kids barely make it to middle school. And so we want to help them not only just make it to middle school, but to high school and to university after that. If they want to become, a pastor, a preacher, a missionary, if they want to become a firefighter or a policeman, architect, whatever they want to be, we want to help them get to that. Whatever God's placed on their heart to do, we want to help them get there. So that's what Operation Worth does, and that's what we're doing down in Tijuana, Mexico. And maybe you're asking here why we do what we do. I know some of you guys may have already heard the story when I came last time, but I'd like to share it with others who maybe have not heard it before. First of all, I'm there in Tijuana, Mexico, because God told me to go. We can't say no to God. That's not a good thing. Don't say no to God. That's bad. I've learned that many times in my life. But we're also there because, it says here, the next generation of Tijuana, Mexico isn't being reached with God's love. And that's where we're coming. As we come in, we do what we do there. Because a lot of the government and even the teachers at schools and even some churches as well, a lot of churches actually, don't see the importance of reaching the kids. The government actually, to be able to solve the crisis of all of the gangs and violence and drugs and alcohol and all that stuff within the teenage age, what their solution was, and they're still saying it too, is that they want to build more rehab centers and more prisons to be able to fit all those delinquents in, to be able to get them off the streets so they stop doing those things, and then, from there, try to do something there. The schools, what it is a lot of the times, like, they just kind of like push off the responsibility to the parents, which unfortunately, some of the parents, not all, but some of the parents are pretty much like if they didn't even exist. They're working day to day and they're doing all they can to get work for their families and stuff like that. And some parents, unfortunately, are way more concerned about their work than their own kids. And the kids get left with the aunt over there, the uncle over there, or the grandma over there, and they're not taken care of. And so a lot of these kids that I know, I have several kids I'm working with currently that either should be in 5th, 6th grade, middle school, and they still don't know how to read. Because the schools are just like, well, you know what? I don't have time for that. I have 32 kids in my classroom, and if you don't learn, you'll learn next time. And then thank the Lord they redid this rule, but for many years, and it was a horrible thing. I don't know why in the world they thought that was okay, but they had this rule for many years that they started about 6, 7, 8 years ago, where they were not allowed in schools to hold back a kid if he was struggling with learning. And so a lot of these kids just got pushed on, pushed on, and pushed on, and pushed on, and pushed on. And so they get into middle school and they have no idea how to read. Thank the Lord that this year they redid that again. So now the schools can now hold back a kid if he needs extra help, which is good. But so many kids, especially, after COVID, if, a lot of us, who have kids know that it was a struggle for a lot of them because they weren't going to school and they didn't have this learning in there. And then in Mexico, it hit a lot of kids because a lot of kids didn't have internet access to take their classes at home. And so many kids for 2 years were without school. And so I know I have a lot of kids that we're working with right now as well. Like we have our education center, which I'll talk about that in a second. We have a lot of kids that like when they were supposed to enter first grade, they couldn't because that's when COVID hit and they're out of school. And so they skipped first, skipped second, and then into third, and they're just completely lost because they're like, what are these letters I'm looking at? What are these numbers over here and all this stuff? So and unfortunately, a lot of the schools didn't really do much to try to help with that afterward. They were kind of just like, well, let's keep going. And the kids are just completely lost. And not only that, but like I was mentioned too, even most churches down there don't even have kids ministries at their church because, and unfortunately, I quote, kids don't tithe, so why are we going to invest in them? And it's a horrible thing to think about because it's like, it's not their fault. Like, how are they going to have money anyway? And they're our future. They're the next generation that's going to rise up. Why would we not want to do something for them so that they can be better in their life? And for me personally, one thing that I live by is that we would have a need for all of these prisons or rehab centers or all these other things to try to help, get people off the streets and off of drugs if we were to reach them while they were kids before that happened. So that's where Operation Worth comes in, and that's what we do down there. We do it every single week. We have programs that we do. We have our kids' church that we do every Saturday. As you can see this picture right here, we have our soccer team that we coach every Monday and Thursday. We have practice, and Saturday we have our games. We have our kids' praise team where the kids have a chance themselves to be able to minister to other kids while we're doing the songs at church. They get to come up and they're part of the team. They help and do things like that. We get invited out to different churches and different events throughout Tijuana where we go and also minister to other kids in other areas as well. And we also have our homework club and our education center that we help out with, that we're partnered with, because the Homework Club actually comes from a different ministry called Baja Christian Ministries, but they have asked me to partner with them to be able to help them along in their things since I have experience in that and stuff like that, and worked several years at a school down there actually with one kid. The kid that's actually right there in this picture right here. I was his, as you can say, shadow in school. He couldn't be in school by himself because he has a lot of learning disabilities and went through a lot of trauma as a kid. Ever since 5 years old, his parents are, it's like before then too, up to 5, around there. His parents were very abusive with him, and just a lot of smacks over the head and a lot of screaming and yelling and all these things. And so he unfortunately got to the state where he was kind of just stuck at that age, and his mind didn't go past that. And so in school, when he finally got in school several years later, when he was 10. He didn't know how to react to kids. He didn't know how to use a pencil. He didn't know how to sit down properly in a chair. And so I had to go with him and teach him all those things during school, which opened the door for me to actually teach even more kids in this class that were kids were behind, to be able to help them get to the reading level they should be at. And then from there, it happened where he kind of aged out of school because they had the rule where, you can't be held back in school anymore. So they pushed him out of school. And so we took him it was in that year where I got in partnership with Baja Christian Ministries with their homework club and their education center that they have. And so brought him over there with a bunch of other kids that I knew too that needed help. And they're with them right now. So we're doing work with them too, which is really great. And then also we do different things throughout the months of the year here. We have different outreaches we do at least once a month. We have an outreach with the kids where we'll go to the park and we'll do a little program there and pray for the people there. There's sometimes we'll go knock on doors as well, hand out invitations, and opens the opportunity to pray for people. We have things too where we will go to the orphanage. We go to the orphanage once a month down in Tijuana. There's several different orphanages, but we go to one there in downtown Tijuana that we serve at every single month. Where Chav and Hector are from, actually. And then also we sometimes also go to the garbage dump, as you can see in the picture right here. We have our summer camp that we have every single year, a weekend where we take the kids out of their everyday distress and things of problems of life at home with their parents, stuff like that. Just a weekend to where they can really just focus on not only friends and fun, but they can have real, just intimate moment with God that whole weekend to be able to really grab hold of their hearts and really show them uh, where they need to be at and where they should be, and that God's there for them through many different things that we do. But so many testimonies that come from those camps that we have done where God has really just broken down the hearts of some kids that we've brought that are just like some tough kids. And they just act like they're all tough and rough and they don't need anything from nobody. And they go to these things and God just completely breaks them down in tears and they just understand that they really do need Jesus. And so God has moved through many different things, like I said, that we do throughout the years and the weeks. And currently the dream right now that we have for us personally that we want to be able to do, that we're not at yet, but we want to have a whole Christian campus down there where we can do many different things you see on the screen here. We want to have a free Christian rec center for kids and teens where they can come, kind of like an after-school program where they can come and have a safe place to be, a safe place to stay, to be able to, because a lot of these kids after school, they walk home alone and they're home alone for hours because their parents are working or they're not there, or the parent has night shift and they don't come in home until like 1, 2, and 3 in the morning. And so all these kids are home by themselves, like taking care of themselves, or the oldest sibling is taking care of all the rest of them. So we want to have a place like this where kids can come and have a free place, to play and get homework help. We have free lessons with music or English or computer classes, stuff like that for them, to be able to give them also extra tools that they can use later on in life as well. Also, we want to be able to have a safe home for at-risk kids and teens, because like I mentioned, a lot of the kids that we deal with, they go through a lot of stuff at home. Some of them, it's like, I just wish I could just take them out of that right now and just get them away from the horrible things they're going through at home. Like I said, we deal with kids that go through abuse, physically, emotionally, and sometimes even sexually, and it's very heartbreaking. And knowing that, that we're there and like we only can work with them on certain days and that's it, because that's the days we have ministry. And sometimes we do, my wife and I, we do some things a little bit extra for them. I'll get into a second as well, to keep them a little bit away from home a little bit longer so we can be able to instill life in them and be able to speak life into their lives. We want to be able to have this. So the plan for this is a temporary place. The plan is a temporary thing for kids and teens to come to. So during that time that we're taking care of them and with them and taking them out of those dangerous situations, there's going to be a team working with the parents as well to help them to be able to recuperate themselves and get back on their feet again so that they can be a whole family again. So that's the plan behind this, and that's what we want to do down there. Also, just have a place for, like I said, playgrounds and park for the kids to play, a soccer field, or plan actually a soccer gym, to have a whole gym built to be able to host a Christian youth soccer league. Because down there's Christian leagues for adults, or a couple of them, like a very few. And then there's youth leagues, but there's no Christian youth league. And so we want to kind of like make the first one down there in Tijuana, so that not only are these kids, playing soccer and having fun, which is a huge sport down there, but as well too, like be able to instill Christ in these kids that are coming, from different teams around. They want to come and be able to have a thing. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the Upward Sports Program. It's a big thing. It was a big thing in the States for a minute. But it's a sports program to where they play sports, and at halftime they have a devotional with the kids, and after they keep going with the game afterward. And we want to do something like that down there as well. We also would love to have a missions base for some of our teens that are down there that have expressed that they want to keep going. I actually had a young adult who's a teacher with us right now tell me a few weeks ago that he feels that's on his heart to do kids ministry. But he's kind of just like, I want to do it. I feel like God's calling me to that, but I just don't know where. And I'm like, well, you're talking to the right guy, first of all. And so trying to get him to be able to come more and be a part of things, but have a base for people that want to either do missions there with us or they want to go out and go somewhere else so we can be able to help them with that. Because like I said in the beginning, for me, it was very hard to try to get to the missions field when I was kind of just like, okay, what do I do? And luckily there's some people that came along in my life and said, hey, I know a place here you can go to. And they got me connections to here and there. It was able to help me get to those points and those places that God was calling me to when at first I didn't know how to get there. And I know a lot of kids down in Mexico as well that they want to do these things. It's very difficult down there. The way that missions work down there with the church that I'm at, for example, a lot of times you have to do a lot of fundraising before, and you can't go on the missions field until you get a certain amount. But sometimes it's like some ungodly amount. It's like, how in the world would anyone ever get that much money together? Of course, God can do miracles. God does miracles all the time. But sometimes a lot of these people, it's just like it's very difficult for them to get started into that. So we want to be able to help with that. I know there's a lot of people I know that want to be in full-time ministry, but it's even my pastor, my church down south right now in Mexico. He's a pastor, but at the same time has his own printing business that he does during the week. And he's not even full-time ministry. He's like he wants to be, but he's part-time this, but he has to work this because, of course, like it's not enough for his family to be able to keep going. So, he has to do that stuff. And so we want to be able to have a missions base, be able to help with people who want to be full-time ministry and help them with that. And then also dormitories for groups that want to come down and serve and be a part of what we're doing, to have a place for people to go instead of having to rent a hotel, stuff like that. They can go to a place to where they can easily serve with us and with very, very low to no cost there to be able to help people, to encourage people to come too. Because I know for me, like I said, it was actually on a missions trip when I turned 18 where God called me to be a missionary on a missions trip. And I know for me that was a life-changing moment. And I want to be able to we want to be able to help people if they feel like called on their heart to be able to be a missionary or come on a mission trip, to have that opportunity for them. Because I know for me, when I was trying to get my money together for my mission trip, $1,600 is hard for a kid just out of high school who is working at Little Caesars getting $6 an hour. So it wasn't easy at all. And so luckily, like someone came through and God did a miracle there and got the money for that trip because I didn't have it 2 days before, and God did a miracle there. That's a whole nother story, a miracle in itself. But we want to be able to provide places for people to come to be able to serve without having to worry about the rest of the stuff. So people can just come and serve and focus on that, and we'll help take care of everything else. But one thing I want to mention a little bit more strongly today is about the safe home for kids and teens. So it's a dream of ours to have the whole facility or have a whole big old house for that one day. But currently, we kind of, in a certain way, accidentally already started it. So it was one day where we were getting ready for soccer, and our soccer games, unfortunately, are 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, which is not fun to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Or not 7 o'clock in the morning. We have to get up way earlier than that because the game starts at 7. So it was very difficult trying to get up in the morning because a lot of times what we do is we go pick up all the kids as well and then go. So that's like a whole hour escapade going around all of Tijuana, that area we live in, to pick up all the kids and then go to our soccer game, which is about 15, 20 minutes away. So it was a lot of work. And so my wife one day, she said, well, you know what? Why don't we pick up some of the kids a little bit farther away? And I don't know, they can just stay with us tonight. We'll give them dinner. And then that way they're already ready in the morning to go, and we'll just go to the soccer game next morning. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds good to me. And so we started helping with some of those kids. It's now been not just a one-time thing, but it's been a weekly thing, to where every Friday after school, we pick the kids up and they come over and we have dinner for them. And they have, a safe place to sleep. And then the next morning, we all wake up and we're ready for soccer, and we just head out the door. And it's a lot easier for us to be able to organize ourselves. But we know as well it's a lot better for the kids too. Right now, as you see in this picture, this is some of our Saturday mornings where we have at least 10 to 12. My wife told me yesterday they had at least like 15 kids at the house yesterday after soccer practice. Where we bring them after our soccer game, after our soccer game, and she'll do breakfast for them. And then after that, take them to our kids' church for our Saturday kids' church at the church that we work at. But these kids over here in this picture, those two rascals in the middle are mine. But this one right here, along with these two over there, are 3 kids that we kind of started this program with, where we're helping them on the weekends be able to stay with us. These 2 kids over here don't actually know it, but we're actually paying for their soccer stuff and everything. They don't know that, but we're paying for it for them because we know that their families can't. And not only that their families can't, but sometimes it gets to a point where it feels like their families kind of just don't want to. And so to explain that really quick, first kid here is Guillermo. And he's actually our nephew. And so I've been talking a lot with, his mom, which is now my sister-in-law. And we've both been talking with her a lot and trying to get her to, be a little better with these kind of things. But I don't know, just sometimes people are just, they're not the easiest to talk to sometimes, And so unfortunately, Guillermo has gone through a lot in his life. He's gone through a lot of just, tough times with his mom at home. His dad's not in the picture. His dad will show up maybe once every 2-3 years for a day and then leave and never be in his life again until 2-3 years later, maybe. And it's very hard on him because because I've heard that, it was the last year when his dad came by, he was there and he was so excited that his dad was coming. He was telling everybody, my dad's coming, I'm gonna be with my dad and stuff like that. And then the dad comes for one day and then leaves, never comes back again, and then gets together with some other lady, and then he never talks to him again. And it hurt his heart. It broke my heart hearing that. Because he has a stepdad at home that doesn't treat him well, unfortunately. Constant yelling and complaining and blaming him for everything. And for a kid who's 10, that's kind of difficult. And so, and he also lives with his 2 older sisters and 2 younger twin sisters. And being only, the only boy in the house is kind of difficult for him growing up too, because like, who am I going to play with? What am I going to do? Because he's a boy wants to do boy things and he can't because he's surrounded by girls and a stepdad who doesn't care about him. And so, it's been really hard for him and stuff like that. But I've, talked with my wife and everything. Like he's been coming with us every weekend, part of this program that we started doing. And you can see a different change and a light up in his face every time he comes. And you can see that like, many times too, like during the week, he'll ask, "Oh, I'm coming over this weekend, right?" When we go by to visit, my mother-in-law who lives by where they live and stuff like that. And we're like, "Yeah, this weekend, just make sure you're ready for it. We'll come pick you up." And you can just see his face light up just to know that, he can be somewhere else and just not to be yelled at or blamed for everything for a change. And not just him, but as well with Jorge, he has a very interesting story. Growing up, he lived with his mom, and kind of just from what I've heard, from his grandma, other men who just come in the picture and were with his mom. None of them were his dad, but like, he doesn't know who his dad is. Uh, but like just every 6 months, 7 months, a year or so, like always changing from home to home to home to home, because his mother, unfortunately, is a drug addict. And so there's actually one point where for several months they were actually living out of a car, like inside of that. Like that was their home. That's where they slept. That's where they lived. That's where they did everything. And once that was happening, the grandma found out and she said, "I can't have this anymore." And she took the kids away, him and his older sister, away from their mom and placed them in her home with her. But unfortunately, now the grandma's at an age where she has been telling us that sometimes it's harder for her to be able to take him to church, take him to soccer, take him to these things. They also live in the next town over, so it's difficult for her to move around and stuff like that. And so she's been struggling a little bit with that. And so there was one time where she had sent him in the city bus, to where we were one time, which I was very uneasy about, because it's one thing if you're like in a safer place, but we're in Tijuana, Mexico, one of the dangerous cities in the whole world. And to send a child who was 11 in a bus by himself, it's kind of dangerous. But she said this is, "I just can't take him today. I'm so sorry. But he wants to go. And so it's the only way I can do it for him." But then after I was like, "Well, we can pick him up. Like, you don't have to send him in a bus. We can go pick him up." And so now, we pick him up every week, and he's also part of our homework club too. So he's with us almost pretty much all week, almost every day. And so, one of the big reasons why we started this too was for him and for the next thing I'm going to talk about too. Um, but he goes through a lot of home too as well. Like I said, like, he lives with his grandma and his older sister. His older sister, thinks he's a bother. So, he doesn't really get too much, family time with her a little bit. And then, not having anyone else when his grandma's working a lot of the day. When she gets home, she goes to sleep because she's so tired, which who could blame her? She's taking care of two kids, her grandkids, and she doesn't have the energy for it anymore. And so he's been going through a lot at home as well, and just going through a lot of thoughts at school. A lot of kids have made fun of him because he was one of those kids that during COVID didn't have school. And because of his mom being a drug addict, she never put him in school. So he struggled a lot. But thankfully, with our homework club, we were able to get him to pretty much almost at the grade level he should be at. So we're thanking, praising God for that he learned very quickly, a lot quicker than we thought, which is a miracle from God, honestly, because he came with us and didn't even know what letters were. And that was like 2 years ago. And now he's reading things by himself and being able to spell things by himself, do math by himself, when before he couldn't do any of that. And then also with the weekends too, is staying with us, being able to help him. You have those moments to be able to talk with him and be able to help him through things. I remember one day he came up to me while he was with us and saying, "I just want to go home right now." I'm like, "Why do you want to go home?" And he's like, "Well, because we're going to go to church in a minute. And sometimes the kids there make fun of it because we have, unfortunately, some rowdy kids at church too. And they unfortunately say things they shouldn't." And Jorge felt really bad and said, "Well, I don't feel like anyone at church actually even cares about me, wants to be with me anyway, be my friend anyway." And I was telling him, be able to have the moment to be able to talk with him, because growing up, I went through that too. I went through moments where kids made fun of me and they picked me out because of this and that, and I never knew why. And I know he's going through the same thing. So be able to have that moment with him, to be able to be here with us, to be able to talk with him, to help him get through those things, to be able to be that change for him where he's not seeing it at home. And so for this last kid here, where I'm ending my presentation today with Oscar. Oscar's a kid where his mom is a drug addict and not even part of his life anymore. His dad is nowhere in the picture. Because he lives with his grandma and his grandpa. His grandpa unfortunately died last year. And so this kid, we've always seen him like out in the street. And so he's never at home. He's always on the street running around, and until like 11, 12 o'clock, even 1 o'clock at night. Sometimes my wife has seen him out in the street. And it's very rough seeing a kid, at 11 years old as well, out in the street just doing whatever his whole life. He actually used to live at the garbage dump, moved out of there, is in the town where he lives right now, 2 towns away, living with his grandma. But his grandma, unfortunately, like I said, as well, she's kind of at a point where she can't really take care of him too much anymore. She has his older sister and his younger sister as well. So it's a lot of stuff for one lady to handle all by herself at her age. And so he's kind of out in the street doing a little, like, doing whatever kind of. But my wife and I have been trying to, guide him down the right path so he doesn't fall into what his mom did and his father did, and to be able to help him see that, he's way more worth than what he can find on the street, and way more worth than what he can find in anything else that he can possibly find out there. And so if you guys can just keep praying for us, for this project that we're doing right now with the safe home for these kids, for God to be able to provide the money for food every weekend, because sometimes, a lot, I'm working also 2 side jobs on top of being a missionary as well. So I'm doing all of that as well to be able to provide all these things, for, these kids and these programs that we're doing, just for God to be able to minister and move in their hearts as well, to be able to God to provide the money to be able to buy our own piece of land and put a big old house on there to be able to have all the kids fit in it, because right now in a very, very small 1 floor 3 bedroom house, it's very hard to be able to fit 6 kids in there plus us as well, but we do it, make it work. God makes it work, but just pray for us in that as too, that God will help us be able to expand this vision that we have here and be able to do even more for the kids, because we want to be able to help more. We want to be able to do more down there. So if you guys can keep in prayer with us in that too, that God can just provide all of our needs, which He will, but keep praying with us in that as well, so God continues to move and do what He needs to do. I mean, I know that together with your guys' help, with your prayers and everything, we can really help these kids see that they're more worth it than what they're saying. Thank you so much, guys.